Thank you. Well, my friends, it's good to be in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and in 16 days, we're going to turn this community red, we're going to turn the state of Wisconsin red, and we're going to make Donald Trump the next president of the United States. Now, this crowd is fired up, and we started out today in Green Bay, Wisconsin, of course. And I told my team it is a high-risk proposition to come into Wisconsin on a Sunday when the Packers are playing a home game, because either we're going to have a fired-up crowd or a really pissed-off crowd. Today we got a fired-up crowd because the Packers won. They brought it home, and I'm grateful for them. You know, I grew up watching Brett Favre, so even though I'm a Bengals guy, I like the Packers. But in just a couple of weeks, my friends, and I maybe it's sacrilegious to say it, but we've got a more important fight on our hands, and that's to beat Kamala Harris and the Democrats, and that's exactly what all of us are going to do. Now, I got to say, I've come to actually feel a little sorry for my Democratic colleague, Tim Walz, who's running with Kamala Harris. No. Think about it. Think about it. I've got the easiest job in American politics, and he's got the hardest job in American politics. Tim Walz has to try to convince the American people that Kamala Harris hasn't been vice president for the last 3.5 years. Tim Walz has got to try to convince people that Kamala Harris didn't cast trillions of dollars in new spending, which shot inflation through the roof and made groceries unaffordable for American citizens. Tim Walz has got to convince the American people that Kamala Harris actually knows what she wants to do as president of the United States, and I just don't think anybody's buying it. Now, I, on the other hand, have the easiest job because I just have to remind people that when Donald Trump was president, inflation was 1.5%. It's pretty good. I just have to remind people that when Donald Trump was president, take-home pay was rising faster than it had in 40 years in the United States of America. And I just have to remind people that when Donald Trump was president, the southern border was secure and America was safe. And thank God for that. So I know all of you are praying for me, and I know we got a lot of Catholics for Trump. I see the signs here. Thank you, Catholics for Trump. And we got a lot of non-Catholics as well. And I just wanted to say, I know you're praying for me, and I really do appreciate it. I need those prayers every single day. But maybe spare a prayer for Tim Walz, because he's got to defend Kamala Harris, and that's the toughest job in American politics. Now, here's the thing about Kamala Harris, and remember 2 weeks ago, her campaign decided to tear up the script. They were trying to hide Kamala Harris in the basement. And then they decided they were going to give Kamala Harris a lot of softball interviews. And here's the problem, my friends. I know we got a lot of baseball fans in the room. That the problem with a softball interview is you've still got to be able to hit a softball. And every time Kamala Harris opens her mouth during one of these interviews, I think Donald Trump and I pick up about 100,000 new voters. So now, you've seen the polls. They suggest that Donald Trump and I have got the momentum. I don't believe the polls. I don't believe the polls when they're good. I don't believe the polls when they're bad. But what I do believe is in the wisdom of the people of Wisconsin. And I don't think they're going to give Kamala Harris a promotion. In fact, thanks to Kamala Harris's open border and sky-high grocery prices, I think the people of Wisconsin are going to say to Kamala Harris, you're fired, go back to San Francisco, where you belong. We want Donald Trump as our president. Now, I want to talk particularly to people of faith because I know we've got a lot of Catholics here. And, I don't talk a whole lot about my faith because, sometimes you just talk about other things. You talk about public policy, but I'm certainly a very devout Christian. And I was actually baptized for the first time in 2019. I returned to my faith as a young man. Got baptized. And I say this as a Christian, as a person who was baptized for the first time just a few years ago. There is something really bizarre with Kamala Harris's anti-Christian rhetoric and anti-Christian approach to public policy. I don't think that we've, that's right, Jesus is king, and I don't think that we've seen... I don't think that we've seen anything like this in modern American politics. You saw this video that Gretchen Whitmer, we know Gretchen Whitmer is, she's the governor of Michigan. That's right, I agree. But Gretchen Whitmer does this really bizarre thing where she acts like she's given somebody communion, but it's a Dorito. And of course, Gretchen Whitmer isn't like a minister of anything, except for, a church I don't necessarily want to talk about. But think about how sacrilegious that is. And think about how offensive that is to every person. Frankly, whether you're a person of Christian faith or not, Donald Trump and I are going to fight for your right to live your values because that's what the First Amendment protects. And I think whether you're a Christian, a Catholic, or any other faith or no faith at all, when you see an American leader, when you see a surrogate of Kamala Harris insulting people of the Christian faith, I think that we should say to every single one of those people, you're fired, we're not giving you any more power, we're going to respect Christians, we're going to respect all people of faith. And it's not just, look, it's not just the symbolism. It's not just what they do, it's also the way that they've governed over the last couple of years. Remember, Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to force them to perform procedures that violate their conscience. I think that's ridiculous. I think we're a big enough country where we can actually respect the right of people of faith to live according to their conscience and not try to force Kamala Harris's progressive values down their throat. Isn't that right? We're a big enough country to respect one another. I think we're a big enough country to not ask American taxpayers to fund abortion at 9 months. I think we're a big enough country to say we're not going to fund that crap with American taxpayer dollars. And I think that we're a big enough country to say that whatever your faith, or whether you're a person of no faith at all, we believe in the First Amendment, and that means, most of all, that we are not going to censor you and silence you. We're going to try to persuade you, because that's what American political leaders ought to do with their fellow citizens. And that's really, my friends, I think what really sets, there's so many things that set, of course, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump apart, but I think that what you'll never hear Donald Trump say is that you should be prevented from saying something because I disagree with it. And yet Kamala Harris, every single action that she's taken, everything that she says, she'll often defend, not disagreeing reasonably, not persuading her fellow citizens, but trying to silence her fellow citizens. And I think a person who believes in censorship is not fit to lead the world's greatest constitutional republic. And you see this censorship attitude a lot of different ways, my friends. You see it when they try to use big tech to silence stories that they don't like. You saw it a few years ago when they were trying to make 3-year-olds wear masks at preschools, and they censored anybody who said, maybe this is a dumb idea. And where you see it today, I think, in the modern American political debate is that if you dare to believe in a secure southern border, Kamala Harris and her goons will call me a racist for daring to believe in American borders. Now, here's the crazy thing about this is people of common sense, black, white, brown, we believe in secure southern borders because we love this country and we want it to be secure. That is not a racist belief. That's a common sense belief. But think about what Kamala Harris is really saying. She's really saying if you don't want fentanyl in your communities, then somehow that makes you a racist. If you want security and don't want to import terrorists from 100 countries all over the world, that makes you a bad person. If you want your young families to be able to walk down the street in security and comfort, that makes you a bad person. Kamala Harris, I think the only bad person today in American politics is you. Why don't you try persuading your fellow citizens instead of attacking them and censoring them? And for all of you, Donald Trump and I will fight for your right to speak your mind. Now, I think the reason why Kamala is so obsessed with censorship is because her economic record is not something she wants to debate. It's why she stands up in front of audiences. And my friends, I'm just too, I'm not shameless enough to be able to do what Kamala Harris does. Well, she'll stand up in front of a crowd and say, on day one, we're going to tackle the affordability crisis affecting American families. Or on day one, we're going to secure the southern border. And I think anybody with an ounce of common sense is saying, Kamala Harris, day one was 1,400 days ago. What the hell have you been doing the whole time? But think about where her economic policies have led for Wisconsin families. You know, the average Wisconsin family is spending $1,000 more per month to afford what they could have afforded when Donald Trump was president. The average Wisconsin family has been cost almost $30,000 by increased costs because of Kamala Harris's inflationary policies. Wisconsin families are paying more than $3 a dozen for eggs. They're paying the highest milk and bread prices that we've seen in this state in a very, very long time. The reason Kamala Harris is running away from her record and attacking Donald Trump is because she hasn't done a damn thing for the people in this room, and we can't let her forget it. Think about it. What Kamala Harris ought to be doing is saying, well, I did this and I did that, and that made your life better, and she can't do these things. She cannot run on her record, so she is running on a dishonesty that she's been nowhere near the Oval Office the last 3.5 years. Even though for 3 years we all saw her on TV bragging that she was the last person in the room when disastrous decisions were made, even when we saw her bragging for years that she was casting the tie-breaking votes on some of the worst pieces of the Biden administration policy, now you talk to Kamala Harris and you would think that she had never even met Joe Biden, much less served as his vice president for 3.5 years. And another way of thinking about this is Kamala Harris, her entire campaign is betting on the fact that she can lie to the American people. She's betting on all of us being dumb, and I think we're a hell of a lot smarter than Kamala Harris gives us credit for. We remember that Kamala Harris cast the tie-breaking vote on trillions of dollars of new spending. We remember that Kamala Harris bragged about opening the American southern border. We remember that Kamala Harris said she was the last person in the room when the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, when that decision was made. And I think while Kamala Harris is betting on all of us being, frankly, very dumb, I think in reality, on November the 5th, Wisconsin is going to send her a message. We actually remember. We remember your failures, and we're not going to reward it. We're going to send Donald J. Trump back to the White House where he belongs. Now, I want to say just a few more things, then we'll take some questions from the press. But first, I want to give some shout outs to. It's okay. Some of them are okay. It's all right. We got some local reporters back there. We got some good people. I want to give a shout outs because you guys have, in the state of Wisconsin, you have some of the best local leadership, and I want to give these guys some credit. And importantly, my dear Senate colleague, the guy who frankly saw the COVID craziness before most people, the great Senator Ron Johnson. Where is Ron at? Where's Ron? He's okay. Well, Ron was supposed to be here, but apparently he's not here. So I want y'all to remember the next time you see Ron Johnson, say, JD's pissed off at you because you didn't even show up and he gave you a shout out. Now, of course, the problem, and there's only really one problem with Ron Johnson, it's that he doesn't have a true partner who is a fighter for the state of Wisconsin. And I think that not only are you all going to send Donald Trump to the White House, you're going to send Ron Johnson a very good partner. You're going to send him Eric Hovde to the United States Senate. Eric. You've also got a great Congressman, Scott Fitzgerald. Scott, please stand up, say hello. Now, what all of us are going to do, now Scott's in Washington, I'm in Washington, Eric Hovde's going to be in Washington. Here's what we're going to do to serve the people of Wisconsin and the people of this country. And let's just do a little contrasting with the record of Kamala Harris and what Donald Trump is going to do, because frankly, he already did a lot of it already, and we're just going to double down on those successes in the next 4 years. Now, Kamala Harris, her economic plan, she is explicitly running, bragging about the fact that she wants to raise taxes on Wisconsin workers and reward countries that steal our jobs and ship American manufacturing overseas. You know what Donald Trump wants to do? He wants to cut taxes for American workers and punish the countries that are stealing our jobs and stealing our industrial base. Kamala Harris has bragged about undoing Donald Trump's 94 executive orders that secured the southern border. She's promised to give Medicare to illegal aliens, and in some cases it's already happening. Which, by the way, if you want to bankrupt Medicare and throw a generation of American elderly citizens into poverty, you do exactly what Kamala Harris is promising to do. We are going to save Medicare and save Social Security by making sure it goes to American citizens. And where Kamala Harris has rolled out the red carpet for illegal aliens, she's given them housing benefits, she's given them health care benefits. She ordered construction companies to stop building the wall. Donald Trump's approach to illegal immigration is a little bit different, and it's very simple. If you're in this country illegally, pack your bags, because in 4 months you're going back home. I know Wisconsin has a proud tradition of military service, and we're proud of all of our families that took it upon themselves to serve this country. If you're in the audience, thank you for your service. But we know that the most precious resource this country has is the lives of its young people who are willing to put on the uniform to keep us safe. And compare Kamala Harris, we've got a new war, a new hotspot breaking out on seemingly every continent in the world. That's because she's incompetent and doesn't know what she's doing. Donald Trump is the candidate of peace through strength, defending America, protecting the people who serve, and preventing these crazy wars from breaking out all over the country. Kamala Harris is the candidate of anti-Christian and anti-Catholic bigotry. She brags about it. That's her policy record. Donald Trump is the candidate of defending your First Amendment right to practice your faith however you want to, because this is the United States of America, and we believe in religious liberty in this country. And Kamala Harris is the candidate who would rather buy oil and gas from tin-pot dictators all over the world. Donald Trump is the candidate of drill, baby, drill. We got plenty of it right here in the United States of America. Let's get it from our own people and our own territory. I've seen so many interviews of President Trump, and they ask him specifically, what is your plan to lower the cost of housing, lower the cost of food, lower the cost of everything? And of course they ask Kamala Harris that same question. When Kamala Harris is asked that question, she says, well, I grew up in a middle-class family. Or she'll say, well, when I worked at McDonald's, I was really good at making the hash browns. And you say, well, what the hell does that have to do with lowering the price of groceries for American families? We want a plan, not some empty political slogan. And I hate to say it, President Trump, he's made it hard for Kamala Harris to run for president, but he made it a little bit harder. Because I don't know if you saw today, he went and worked at McDonald's for about 15 minutes. And I called him on the drive over here, and I said, sir, I think you've worked at McDonald's about 15 minutes longer than Kamala Harris did. But look, here's why the energy thing is so expensive. I'm going to go on a little tangent here. Is that okay? Think about it. If you're building a house, one of your main expenses is the lumber, the building materials that get delivered to the job site. And if the truck driver who's delivering that stuff is paying 50% more for diesel, then all of us are paying more for housing. If you're buying groceries, the truck driver who gets those groceries to the grocery store is paying 45% more for gasoline, then we're all paying more for groceries. Not to mention the effect when you increase energy costs, it makes American farmers, it makes it harder for them to grow and do what they need to do. So our plan, put simply, to lower prices on everything from groceries to housing is to unleash America's brilliant energy sector. Let these folks do what they do best, and all of us are going to prosper because of it. Now, I know Waukesha County was recently forced to declare fentanyl a public health emergency. And a lot of you know, I know the opioid addiction problem firsthand. My mom struggled with addiction for a very big chunk of my early life. That's one of the reasons why my grandmother helped raise me, is because for a lot of time my mom was unable to take care of me. And I want everybody who's dealing with it, whether it's you personally, a friend, or a family member, I do really believe that there is hope in recovery. There is hope on the other side of addiction. My mom's been clean and sober for 10 years, and we're proud of her. Thank you, Pastor. Now, that to me is the grace of God, and I know in this room we believe that God sometimes works in mysterious ways, but he does work every single day in the lives of citizens of this state and of this country, and I'm living proof of it, my friends. But while we pray to God for recovery, and we fight every single day for those of our loved ones who are getting caught up in this stuff, wouldn't it be nice to have a president of the United States who stopped this poison from coming into our country in the first place? Think about all the second chances, all the moms and dads who never got a second chance with their kids, all of the children who have been orphaned because we have a Vice President, Kamala Harris, who has given free rein to the Mexican drug cartels. Well, Donald Trump is going to take a different approach. We're going to declare war on those Mexican drug cartels and make this country safe for the American citizenry, not for the drug cartels and their disgusting business. One of the craziest thing that's happened to me since I started running for vice president, and there's a lot of crazy stuff that's happened to me since I started running for vice president, is we were in the interdiction room in a small Georgia town, about 50,000 people, called Valdosta, Georgia. And if you've heard Valdosta in the news, it's because it got hit pretty hard by Hurricane Helene, and luckily they're starting to build out and to recover. But I was there before the hurricane hit. And I go into this drug interdiction room, and I'm looking, and it's, by the way, it's not just drugs, because the drug cartels, one of their biggest businesses is illegal guns. So a lot of the most violent crimes that are committed by the most hardened criminals, they're getting their guns illegally. Now, I think we ought to stop that and protect the Second Amendment rights for law-abiding American citizens. Kamala Harris wants to take everybody's guns and reward the drug cartels. That seems to get it in reverse order to me. But aside from the guns, you see just all kinds of drugs. You know, bags of marijuana, there's meth, there's pills, there's THC, and of course there's fentanyl. And you know, I asked these sheriffs, I said, well, there's something here that's just out of place. There's a box of candy, you know, like a Nerds candy, Sour Patch candy. And I'm like, what is that? That doesn't belong here. And the sheriff told me that this is actually THC and fentanyl that had been manufactured to look like children's candy so the cartels would make it easier to get it into our country in the first place. And I think all of us know what's going to happen is that an innocent American child is going to pick up a packet of candy on a playground, and they're going to pay for it with their life because Kamala Harris refuses to do her job. And I want all the parents, all the grandparents, everybody who's been affected by this epidemic to know that when Donald Trump is back in the White House, you will have a fighter for your security, your safety, and your children's future. And you also have a fighter who's going to make it easier to afford the American dream again. We've got young people. I see a lot of young people in this room, and I'm sure a lot of you would love to be able to buy a home, start a family, but the American dream of homeownership has gotten out of reach in Kamala Harris's America. A lot of folks don't believe that they can afford groceries because they can't. A lot of folks can't afford the basic necessities of life, and when Donald Trump is back in the White House, we're going to make the American dream affordable again. We're going to fight for you to be able to afford a good life. Because while Kamala Harris seems to be motivated by public policy that puts the interests of illegal aliens over American citizens, Donald Trump is motivated by a very simple principle that if you are here legally and you work hard and play by the rules, you ought to be able to afford a good life in this country that all of us love, and we're going to fight for that future every single day. But you got to get us there first. And that brings me to my final point. I want to make sure I get this website right. I'm going to read it off. SwampTheVoteUSA.com. Everybody go to SwampTheVoteUSA.com. Here's the thing. I'm telling you, and this is not me BSing you. I've been in this campaign for 3 months, but look, you know when there's a campaign that's going well, and you know that there's a campaign that's going poorly, and right now the Trump campaign is going very, very well, my friends. We've got the momentum. We've got everything we need. But we have got to keep at it for the next 16 days, because think about this. We're never going to get a fair shake from the corporate media. We're never going to get a fair shake from Kamala Harris and her lying surrogates. What we do have is the power of every single person in this room. So whether it's texting all your friends, whether it's sending emails, whether it's Instagram or X or whatever social media that you use, I want you to try to be a force multiplier over these next 16 days, because I don't just want you to take yourself to the polls. I want every single person in this room to get 9 of their friends and family to the polls with them, because if you do that, we're going to win, and Donald Trump is going to be the next president of the United States. The country depends on it. The country cannot have 4 more years of disastrous Kamala Harris. We need 4 more years of the candidate of peace and prosperity. Let's get Donald Trump into office, my friends. Let's do it together. God bless you, Wisconsin. Thank you for having me. I love being here. We're not quite done. Let me try to take 3 or 4 questions. Let's start with the local media if we can, and then we'll move on to the national folks if there's time. Was that to me or to them? First question.
Hi, Mr. Vance. This is Kelly Milan with Spectrum News 1 Milwaukee. Thanks for taking questions. Mr. Vance, how does the Catholics for Trump campaign factor into your broader strategy for winning key battleground states like Wisconsin?
Well, it's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. I think, look, obviously, every person in this country, if they're here legally, their vote matters. But there are a lot of Catholics as a group. There are a lot of Catholics who I think rightfully feel abandoned by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's leadership, and they're just looking for somebody to protect their rights and make this country an affordable and decent place to raise a family. And that's all. I think that's true of a lot of Catholics. It's true of non-Catholics too. But we cannot have an American government that is persecuting Christians for living their faith. We should be rewarding people and encouraging people to live their faith. We believe. Look, you've got people of faith all across the state of Wisconsin who are doing detox facilities for people who are suffering from drug addiction who wouldn't be able to get help were it not for those people of faith. You've got food banks and soup kitchens that are being run in this state every single day because people of faith are living Jesus' greatest commandment, which is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. We have people, we have Christian families that are raising children, and we want them to be able to raise their children as they see fit without having a federal government that is trying to attack their faith. We have Christian organizations that are helping people with daycare and childcare. Why is it that Kamala Harris seems to think that Christians are a bigger threat to this country than the Mexican drug cartels that she has let run rampant all over this country? It's a disgrace. But look, I think as a political matter, because so many Christians are sick of being told by their government that they're not welcome in their own country, I think Christians are going to turn out in a very, very big way for Donald Trump on November the 5th. And if they do, if Christians get out there and vote, we are going to win, my friends. It's that simple. Next question.
Good afternoon, Senator. Chuck Quirmbach of WUWM Radio. I had a question for you about Liz Cheney. Vice President Harris and Liz have an event coming up in Brookfield, just a few miles from here, Monday night.
That was for Liz Cheney, okay. Not for you, sir. But go ahead and ask your question.
Well, either way, sir. But what's your opinion of Liz Cheney?
That's too easy. That's too easy. My opinion of Liz Cheney is low. Is that good enough? Look, I have friends. My dear friend is running not too far from here for U.S. Senate for the state of Indiana, Jim Banks, former friend of Liz Cheney. We got a lot of good Jim Banks fans here. I've known a lot of people in Washington who served with Liz Cheney, and what they will tell you to a person is that Liz Cheney is motivated by an obsessive hatred of the people who cost her Wyoming congressional seat. She is not motivated by a love of this country. She's a resentful, petty, small person, and if Kamala Harris wants to parade her around, she's welcome to. One more thing about that is think of the big tent common sense team that Donald Trump has assembled. On the right, you've got folks like Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, Nikki Haley. On the left, you've got folks like Tulsi Gabbard and Bobby Kennedy. Tulsi Gabbard, who picked Kamala Harris apart in her debate so badly that Kamala Harris dropped out of the Democratic presidential contest a few years ago. I think I speak for everybody in this room. We'd much rather have Tulsi Gabbard than Liz Cheney, so that's a trade we'll make every day and twice on Sunday. Next question.
Hi, Senator Vance. Emily Pofall from WISN 12 News here in the area. So early in-person voting starts in Wisconsin on Tuesday. Given what your running mate has said about absentee voting leading to fraud, do you only want people to early vote in person? And does that hinder the Republicans' effort to get out the vote?
I think President Trump has been very consistent on this, and I'm going to be very consistent on it. We want people to vote in every single way that they can. We want every vote to count. We want get out there and vote. Vote by mail, vote absentee, vote early, vote on Election Day. Here's all that President Trump has said is in the past. Look, in the past, me and President Trump have both said this. I don't like election season. I like Election Day. But as Donald Trump has said, it is what it is. And if the Democrats are going to use every method of voting possible, then the Republicans, we've got to do it too. We've got to take advantage of the options that are given to us. And so we're going to keep on fighting for election integrity. We're going to keep on trying to pass things like the SAVE Act, which would make it harder for illegal aliens to vote in our elections. We believe in that. But while we fight for every legal ballot to count, we are also going to encourage every single person, if you are sick of the BS from Kamala Harris and just want to get back to common sense, vote however you want to vote, but make sure you get out there and vote because we need it to win this election. Next question. And we'll take a couple more here.
Mr. Vance, Bria Jones with Fox 6 News, Milwaukee. I have a question for you. Good evening. You said that you believe in the wisdom of the people of Wisconsin. In this moment, what words of wisdom would you share with undecided voters?
Well, that's a good question. I appreciate that, Bree. I guess that what I would say to undecided voters, ma'am, is, look, we have the best country in the world. We got the best people, the best natural resources, but we have got broken leadership that is holding this state and holding this country back. We could do so much better. We could make groceries more affordable. We could make housing more affordable. We could secure that southern border. We could lower violent crime in our communities. We've got the will and we've got the talent to do it. We've just got to get Kamala Harris out of the White House. That's what I would say to those undecided voters is She agrees with me, though I don't think you're undecided. What I think that there are a lot of people, I think, who probably are looking to the future like I did when I was a 17-year-old kid, which is they're worried about paying for the things they got to pay for. They're worried about whether they're going to be able to make ends meet. They're worried an emergency medical bill could bankrupt them and ruin them financially. But they're also fundamentally hopeful because they believe in the promise of this country. I think the best way for America's promise to become more and more fully realized is to fix the broken leadership in Washington and get Donald Trump back in the White House. I really believe that. That's why I'm running to help him. And so, ma'am, I just encourage those swing voters. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Because if the answer is no, and I think for most Wisconsinites the answer is no, then let's get Donald Trump back in the White House. That's my pitch. Thank you for your question. Yes, sir.
Hi, Senator. Simon Levy in New York Times. Democrats have begun attacking Jill Stein, the third-party Green Party candidate, because she sought help from Republicans in her campaign efforts. I'm just curious what you make of her candidacy. Do you think she's playing spoiler? Do you hope she siphons support from Harris?
Well, look, the Jill Stein thing is interesting because the Democrats will attack Jill Stein while at the same time attacking, or they're trying to keep Bobby Kennedy on the ballot, even though Bobby Kennedy's already endorsed Donald J. Trump. So I think the Democrats, if they're worried about spoilers, they ought to look in the mirror because Bobby Kennedy had a hell of a lot more support than Jill Stein ever did, and they're trying to prevent him from getting off the ballot. Look, I honestly, I don't know much about Jill Stein. I obviously don't think she's going to get a whole lot of votes, but my attitude is the best person to vote for is Donald J. Trump, and the second best person to vote for is anybody not named Kamala Harris. So I don't really care what people do after that. All right. So let me leave you with just a couple of final thoughts. Number one, I want you to go home and, again, whether it's text message, social media, whatever you use or use all of it, get out there and talk about why you're voting for Donald Trump and why you want your neighbors to do the same. That's request number one, okay? Request number two, especially with some of our elderly folks, people who are finding it harder to get the polls, don't just encourage them to go out there and vote. Make a plan to help them vote. You know, I've got family members who, trust me, none of us want on the road, my friends. And we've got other family members who are helping to make sure they've got a plan to drive them to the polls on or before Election Day. I hope you all do that because we got to win this race and we got to count on everybody's vote in order to do that. But the third thing I want to do is I'm going to embarrass, speaking of family members, I've got my big cousin and her family. She's more like my big sister. We've got Rachel Vance in the room. Rachel, where are you? Well, okay, she was sitting right here. Apparently they pulled her backstage because we're getting ready to wrap up. But Rachel, I love you. Thank you for being here, and thanks for spending some time in the beautiful state of Wisconsin. Now, Rachel's from Texas, so she doesn't necessarily believe that Wisconsin weather is always this nice in late October. But I'm telling you, every time I come to town, the weather is perfect. So just make me vice president. I'll come back all the time, and we can always have beautiful weather in the state of Wisconsin. But my final thought, my friends, is this. We have a country to save. And when we say that, it's not just about beating the Democrats, as much as it's going to be fun to beat Kamala Harris in just a couple of weeks. It's about giving the American people the kind of government that is going to deliver better prosperity, that's going to make groceries more affordable, that's going to secure that southern border. We've got 16 days to give the American people a government that is fit to lead this great nation. Let's go get it done. God bless you. Thank you, Wisconsin. We'll see you soon.